Okay, so welcome to tonight's class. Tonight is a very, very special class, as we shared that we are this week, coming up this week, after Shabbat, Tuesday night, Wednesday, is on the Hebrew calendar called Yud Shvat, the 10th day of the month of Shvat. The 10th day of the month of Shvat is a very, very special day in that it's a meaningful day that the previous Rebbe, the sixth Chabad Rebbe, passed away 70 years ago, and the 69 years ago, and the present Rebbe took over the Chabad leadership. Now, so we're entering into the 70th year, because now starting 69, which is entering into the 70th year. So what happened was before, just to give you a little background, before the previous Rebbe passed away, he would write certain discourses, certain he would say, but in this case he wrote a Chassidic discourse which had 20 chapters to it. And then when he passed away, they had given out his Chassidic discourse that had 20 chapters. After that, a year later, when the Rebbe took over leadership, the Rebbe would give over a review of that last will, as we call it, of the previous Rebbe, his Chassidic discourse, and the Rebbe would discuss in depth one specific chapter. So over a period of 20 years, the Rebbe would go in depth once a year on one of the chapters. Now, 9 years later, Tafshin Yud Tes, the Rebbe discussed in depth chapter 9. 20 years later, that's 60 years ago. 20 years later after that, in Tafshin Lamed Tes, the Rebbe would discuss it again, and unfortunately since then there has not been another deepened discussion. So we're going to be studying tonight the Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe, which the Rebbe said in the year Tafshin Yud Tes, which is just around 60 years ago, and the Rebbe discussed this Maimer in depth. Now, it's all based on the Chassidic discourse. If you want to Google it, you want to look it up. It's called Basi L'Gani, which was the original discourse given by the previous Rebbe. And this is the one from the Rebbe. And again, every single year there's a new Chassidic discourse. But now we are going to be discussing and learning in depth the Maimer, the discourse of the year Tafshin Yud Tes. Now, so I'm going to give you a general overview of what we're going to be discussing today, and then we're going to go into it, and you're in for a nice treat, for a nice journey, because it's a very, very deep Chassidic discourse. And that is as follows. The general idea, which we're going to be studying today, really in depth, is that when a person of flesh and blood, as we all are, in this physical world, goes ahead and does a mitzvah, which is a commandment of God, a tangible mitzvah, we have the power by doing the mitzvah to connect to the essence of the infinite light of God. Now this is deep stuff. When you do a mitzvah, a physical mitzvah, whether it's eating kosher, keeping Shabbat, and again, the 613 commandments. So any one of the 613 commandments, either doing one of the positive commandments, one of the 248 positive commandments, or refraining from the 365 negative commandments, at that moment, when you either do the mitzvah, you refrain from sinning, God forbid, and you don't actually, so it's a good thing, so it's a mitzvah then, at that moment you connect to the essence of the infinite light of God. So again, you're connecting to the essence of the infinite light of God. Now think about that. At that moment, we're finite human beings. We're finite. Here we're saying not only are we connecting to God, because there's many levels to God, many different levels of depth to God, but we're saying we're able to literally touch and connect to the infinite part of God. Now that's huge. That is huge. Because think about it. Think about any enjoyment, experience that we have in this world. They're finite enjoyments. And let's even say, think about the greatest enjoyment you've ever had in your life. 1 to 10, and bring it up to a 9 or a 10 even. As great as it was, guess what? It's a finite enjoyment. So the most you can go to is a 10. Here we're saying you're off the charts. You're in the world of infinite. Not only the world of infinite, you're touching literally the essence of the infinite of God by doing a mitzvah. And the question is, how is that possible? So we're going to go today into a very, very deep Kabbalistic journey and how that works. Now, what's interesting is, at the end of the discourse, the Rebbe gives actually a beautiful, powerful 2 meditations, which we're going to do, and very powerful meditations, which will help you take everything that we learned today, that we're going to learn today, and internalize it in a very, very practical way. I just want to point out one interesting thing, and which is important, that this discourse, what the Rebbe does, he actually brings down teachings from every one of the Chabad rabbis for 7 generations. Now, it's not just sharing a Torah thought of one of the Chabad rabbis. It's by when you share a teaching of one of the Chabad rabbis, or whoever it may be. Let's say you're studying Rashi. So Rashi is alive at that moment, spiritually with you. So by bringing in every one of the Chabad rabbis over the 7 generations in this discourse, so the Rebbe was drawing down that energy, and we're studying here in our Chabad house in Fort Myers, Florida, out of all places in the world, right? We have the power here, right here, to draw down the spiritual energy of the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, and all the 7 Rebbes as we share their teachings. So you're going to, if you're able to, God willing, there's no reason why you shouldn't, consciously or subconsciously, you'll be able to connect tonight to every one of the Chabad rabbis. Hopefully you'll feel it physically, and if you don't, just know just know that they're here. They're here with us. Okay. So the discourse is actually based on a verse that says as follows. It's from King Solomon, Shir HaShirim, and he says like this, that Basi Legani tשי, where the verse is saying is that God is saying, I came to my garden. Now the Medrash says and explains, this is not Kabbalah yet, mysticism, the Medrash says that the verse is saying is, God is saying, Basi, I came Legani to my garden, and the Medrash says, it says Legani, my garden. What does that mean, my garden? And the Medrash explains as follows, that when Hashem created the world, when God created the world, now when God creates things, you think God creates half worlds? You think He gives like a half a cup of whatever you want? He gives a full cup. And as He gives complete. And the rule is, Kol HaNoisen, anytime someone gives something, they give with a full heart, with a good eye. So God, when God created the world, God created it complete. What does that mean, complete? Besides the fact that we have the world that we have, but more importantly, what's a complete world without God in there? So when God created the world, God was in the world, God was present. Not a veneer or an image or a ray or a light, God Himself. You know, in the term of Kabbalah, it's called Ikar Shechina. Shechina is the way God comes and rests in the world. Ikar Shechina means the main Shechina, God Himself. Or the terms of Kabbalah, it's called Atzmus Ein Sof. The essence of the infinite light was in this world. God was here, 100%. Now, if God is here, that's great, right? Beautiful world. Now, what happened was, after God created the world, and God is fully present, fully present, fully available, but God is not a control, He doesn't control you. You have to want Him. If you want Him, He's there. If you don't want Him, He's not going to push Himself on you. So what happened was, unfortunately, we all know from the Torah, the first primordial sin was the Chet Eitz Hadas, when they unfortunately did not listen to God, and they ate from the forbidden fruit, debate what it is, but it's not for discussion for right now. What happened was, they didn't listen to God. Because God said you can have everything you want in this world. Everything. Take it all. However, don't eat this one thing. And they couldn't hold themselves back. They went ahead and they ate from the forbidden fruit. So what did God do? God, so to speak, felt, oh my gosh, like, why am I so available? And He took a jump, spiritually, and He left this physical world, and He went up to the first heaven. He left the physical world, and He went up to the first heaven. That was by the first sin. And the Medrash goes into, I mean, the discourse is very, very long, so I'm not going to go into the whole Medrash, but the Medrash goes into the way there were 7 sins that took place. The Dor Enosh and Dor Aflaga, the Mabul, etc. There were 7 sins that took place, and every time there was a dramatic sin, God kept on going higher. So for the first sin, he left from the earth to the first heaven, then to the second heaven, until he ended up in the 7th heaven. That means God's presence was not felt. God's presence was not felt down in this world through people sinning. Now, what happened was, as we all know, you read the Bible, you read the Torah, God's not around. I mean, God is around in a concealed way, but in a revealed way where Ika Shechina, the infinite light of God, was not around. What happened afterwards? So we all know the famous story. There was the first Jew, Abraham, and Abraham started to make these calculations. Who created this world? Who's running the world? How's this all happening? And he started to serve God. He said, God, I know you're the one. And he started to create a real, tangible relationship with God. Now, we all know God is a loving, kind God. Reach out to him, we'll take your call. He's got a call. You got to make the phone call. As long as you make the phone call, God will take the call. And sure enough, God didn't right away jump down to this world. He started to come down close to me. He left the 7th heaven, he went down to the 6th. And then, again, the Medrash goes into detail every one of the sins, but also every one of the righteous people that brought the Shekhinah down from one level to the next. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, etc. But God, so he made it down from the 7th to the 6th, and then God made it down to the first heaven. Then comes Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the 7th in the order of the righteous people. And as Ray points out, there's something magical about number 7. 7 is a special number. And Moshe Rabbeinu was the 7th, and he brought down God from where? From the first heaven right above earth, and he brought him down back to this world. He brought him back down to this world. So notice, just like before the journey started where God left with the sins, and the first sin unfortunately is the worst one because that caused God to leave the physical world, and then it went to keep on going higher. Abraham obviously was the first to start bringing it down, which is great. Abraham has the power of the first, but the one that actually brought it to the finish line is who? Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and Moshe Rabbeinu brought it down into this world. And as the verse says, God said in the Torah, the Asuli Migdash, you want me to finally make it down to the finish line? Make to me a Migdash. Make to me a holy place, and then v'shachanti b'soichem, I will come down, I will dwell in this physical world. And sure enough, we made the Mishkan, and God came down into this physical world. Now, so we all know, according to Kabbalah, that every single word in the Torah is specific, every single letter is specific. So if what caused God to come down to this world, as the Torah says, v'asli migdash, make to me a migdash, which is a Mishkan and Migdash, is the same idea. And B'shachanti v'sochem, I'll dwell there. So there must be something unique and special about the Mishkan and the Migdash, and every single component of it that has to do with God coming back into this world. So if you give a look, what did God say? The Asuli, you should make to me the Mishkan. How did they make the Mishkan? So the Mishkan was made with Crushin, planks. What were the planks made out of? They were made out of atzei shittim, cedar wood. Now, what's interesting is that that's the technical thing. God says, you make the Crushin, make the Mishkan, then God's going to dwell there. Now we know it's not just about the planks. There must be a spiritual significance to the planks. So if you give a look, atzei shittim are cedar wood. That's the English translation, cedar wood. But atzei shittim in Hebrew is the two words. Atzei is wood, shittim. Now shittim could also be translated as shtus. Now what does shtus mean? Shtus means like this. Shtus means almost like being silly. Now you can be silly in a negative way, or you can be silly in a positive way. Famous story where this rabbi came to a wedding and he wanted to make the chassan and kala happy. It's a mitzvah to make the chassan and kala happy. So he started to dance he took a hadassim, which we use in the lulav, you know, the branches that we use in the lulav, and he have two hands, right? But he had three, so he was technically juggling. So one of the rabbis said to him, "Oh my gosh, this guy's like being silly. It's inappropriate." Now what happened was, when this rabbi passed away, So between the people that came to mourn him and the ark, there was a huge fire, a spiritual fire. The rabbi realized that, and he said, the fact that he was being silly in a positive way to make the chassan and kala happy, that caused that he should have this tremendous fire. So in other words, shtus can cause us to veer off, but shtus causes us to come back to God. Which means, why does somebody sin? It's irrational. Why would you sin? God created the world, God created you, God gave you a whole life, so why would someone not listen to God? It's not logic, it's just whatever irrational. People do things and then later go, oh my gosh, why did I do it? So the same thing also, if you want to do positive things, sometimes you don't understand why you should do it. Do it. If it's a mitzvah, do it. And as long as you do it, even if it's for irrational reasons, eventually you're going to do the mitzvah. So just like when you sin irrationally, so the way to combat the sinning is by irrational good behavior. And that's why the Mishkan is made out of Atzei Shittim, to remind us that sometimes you can't use logic to get you back on the right path. Sometimes you have to be illogical. And which is interesting is that the Atzei Shittim in Hebrew, they call it Crushin. Now, Crushin is the singular for Crushin is Keresh. Now, Keresh has 3 letters, Kuf Rei Shin. We know Kabbalah is full of numerology and letters, etc. The same 3 letters for Crushin, which is Keresh, has the same 3 letters as Sheker. What's Sheker? Falsehood. Falsehood. So in other words, another component of the Mishkan is to transform the falsehood of the world, the falsehood that convinces you to rebel against God, and to cause you to come back and make a kesher. Kesher is a bond, also the same 3 letters, back with God. And what's the idea? What's the component behind a kesher? Is because a kesher is a connection. And the goal is we want to try to constantly create different connections with God. So that is, so far we're giving just a background of what the previous Rebbe discusses in the Chassidic Discourse from the previous Rebbe that he gave out before he passed away. He goes on to say, and soon we're going to go in depth, the paragraph specifically that the Rebbe goes into in tremendous in depth. So then the previous Rebbe continues on to say that a keresh, what's a keresh? We said it's a keresh. It's made out of acacia. It's made out of cedar wood, etc. But a keresh is also called an amud. It's a beam. It's a beam. Now a beam is oimed. When do you use a beam? A beam you use to connect if you have a floor and you want to put up a roof, a ceiling, so you need a beam. So the beam connects the floor to the roof. Floor to the roof. So in other words, just like when a person needs to connect the floor to the roof, you need a beam. So the Rebbe explains that's the same idea with a mitzvah. In other words, the beam is like a mitzvah. In other words, we're comparing beam to the mitzvah. Mitzvah is the priority. It's like a mitzvah. Why? Because when you do a mitzvah, think of what happens when you do a mitzvah. Who commands you to do mitzvah? God commands you to do a mitzvah. So when you do a mitzvah, God commands, and you're doing it, what are you doing?
Connecting.
You're very good, exactly. You're connecting with God. So it says the beams are like a mitzvah, because a mitzvah connects to God. But here the previous Rebbe adds one important point, and that's what the Rebbe is going to talk about in depth in this discourse, that not only does it connect, but there's a superiority that a mitzvah has over just a regular beam. Because what does a beam do? Think about it. You have a floor and you have a ceiling. The beam holds the 2 up. That's it. Done. Now a mitzvah also does that. It connects the 2. The difference is, and that's the one word that the previous Rebbe adds, is that a mitzvah is greater than just a beam because a mitzvah actually draws down. So you put up a beam, there's nothing drawing down, it's holding it up. It's sitting on the bottom, and it's holding up the ceiling. A mitzvah, besides the fact that it connects, but it also has the power to draw down godly energy. Because when you do a mitzvah, you're drawing down godly energy. Now, remember what I told you in the beginning of class. The Rebbe is going to bring in now a teaching from every Chabad Rebbe. By bringing in a teaching from Rebbe, he's going to explain what we want to talk about, but more importantly, we're drawing in the energy from different Chabad Rebbe. So the first, and he goes in order. So the first Rebbe he quotes now is the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, And he discusses the idea that when we said that a mitzvah draws down the godly energy. So he brings down from the Alter Rebbe that explains like this, that what is a mitzvah? What is a mitzvah? What is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is called yartzeit Hashem. We know in the Sfirot, there's 10 Sfirot. The highest sphere is what? Is Keser. There's 2 levels in Keser, Tainug and Ratzon. Ratzon means the will. When somebody wants something, when someone has a Ratzon, it's very, very deep. It's very strong. It's coming from a very, very high place. So when God came along and gave us 613 commandments, that is the will of Hashem. The will of Hashem. So a mitzvah is the will of Hashem. So he quotes from the Alter Rebbe. And he goes a step further, that the Alter Rebbe brings from the Zohar, where Rabbi Chuni ben Akana says that Keser, which we said that Ratzon was in Keser, Keser is the name, and which means crown, but Keser also numerically is 620. 620. And the idea is that when you do a mitzvah, you're doing the will of Hashem, you're doing, which is the Keser of Hashem, but you draw down 620 powerful lights in yourself. Think about that. Every time you do a mitzvah, you're drawing down 620 powerful lights. Now, so in other words like this. A mitzvah, where does the mitzvah start? Does it start down here or it starts in heaven?
Here. God.
Huh?
God.
Very good. It starts with God. It doesn't start here. The mitzvah came from God. So now, let's think for a second. We're using 2 terms. We use the term of a keresh, a beam, right? A beam. And we're using the term of mitzvah, that they both have connections, right? Now, a beam, where does a beam start? On the floor or in the ceiling? On the floor. You're laughing because, right, it's funny, but it's not funny. A beam starts on the floor. You put it on the floor, so it starts here, and then on top of it you place the roof, the ceiling, whatever you want, whatever you're putting up there. But it starts on the bottom. A mitzvah is just the opposite. Where does a mitzvah start?
Ceiling.
Mitzvah starts in the ceiling. It starts from the top. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? It's a beam that starts on the top, not in the bottom. Right? And what does the mitzvah do when we do them? But on the other hand, it starts in the ceiling, but we're commanded. But when we do the mitzvah, we do it, we draw down the powerful light. Now, so you see clearly there's 2 major differences between a mitzvah and a beam. What's the differences? Number one is that a mitzvah not only connects the 2, but it actually draws down light. That's point number 1. And point number 2, that a beam starts in the bottom and a mitzvah starts on the top. You see the 2 differences? One, it starts on top versus the bottom, and the other difference is it also draws down light. Now, the question is, why is that? Think about it. A foundation is normally from here. You put a beam, it starts here. How come over here it's just the opposite? No, seemingly, where should the foundation start? From the bottom.
Mm-hmm. When you think about it, though,
yes,
the ceiling is not any more important than the bottom of the beam, the ground.
Right.
They're equally as important. So one shouldn't have more importance than the other.
True, on a certain level, but the fact is, which is intriguing, is when you do a mitzvah down in this world, the mitzvah is done with something physical, right? And the mitzvah itself is physical, and B, not only is the mitzvah itself physical, but the person doing the mitzvah is physical. So we need the person on the bottom, but nevertheless, where does it all start from? It starts from the top. So the question is, why is that?
Are mitzvahs infinite?
Huh?
Are mitzvahs infinite?
Are they, he says.
Are mitzvahs infinite? Are mitzvahs infinite?
Are they, he says.
Anything from God is infinite, right?
So mitzvahs infinite. When you do a mitzvah, you're basically connecting with the infinite and becoming one with the infinite, infinitely.
Okay, good point. Yes, good point. Okay. So now the question is like this. If it comes from heaven, right, but nevertheless, again, a mitzvah starts from top and also it gets drawn down. But who draws down the energy? Notice, for example, let's say God gave a mitzvah, right? God gives the mitzvah. There's no human being to do the mitzvah. And no one does the mitzvah. What happens? Nothing. Now, but on the other hand, when we do a mitzvah, what we're doing is we're actually drawing down from above. And the question is, how does that work? Okay. You got it? On one hand, the mitzvah is from God. On the other hand, we have the power to do the mitzvah and we have the power to draw down the light. How is that so? In other words,
it's a cycle.
If we're saying everything comes from heaven, so God should be shooting down the energy. He doesn't need, what do we have to do with it? But nevertheless, we're saying is, who's the only one that can do the mitzvah? Us physical human beings. We physical human beings made of flesh and blood. And we do the mitzvah with something physical. If the power is on high, and the energy comes from on high, so what does it have to do with us? And here comes a powerful Kabbalistic insight into realize who we are. And that's as follows. Who created us? True God. God created everything. But when we say we were created by God, as you said, meaning to say is we are created by God. Now, in order to understand our ego, you want to look at the person that created you. God comes from where? Who created God? Nobody. How do you say that? I'm going to say it in Kabbalistic terms and I'll translate it. God, the expression is mitziyusai. His existence is me'atzmusai. It's from himself. You got it? Mitziyusai me'atzmusai. So the essence of God is he created himself. That's the DNA. That's the energy of God. So when you meditate on God and you think about God and you think about where God comes from, he came from nowhere. He created himself. Now that's contrary to the way everything operates from when God created the world till down here. Because everything after God comes from somewhere. Everything you can trace back to where it comes from. Take for example a tree. Take for example you have a fruit. Where did the fruit come from? You know, it came from a tree. Tree came from the ground. Everything this table, where did it come from? From its wood, came from a tree, everything you can trace back. Everything you can trace back. There's one entity, we could in theory trace it back, but there's one entity that says, I created myself. You're laughing. Who are we talking about?
Because it doesn't say it. He knows it.
But it's that which is not.
One second. Let's first define what we're talking about.
We're going to get
The
political.
ego.
Very good. Exactly. The ego. The self. The ego, the I, says, I. There's no mother, there's no father, there's no God. The ego basically says, I created myself. I am an independent existence. No one made me. I don't need anybody. Think when we were teenagers. And we're adults, we're adult teenagers. There's a component to us, not every part of us. There is a component to us, we have a godly side too. But there's a component to us, which is the ego part. I didn't say that all of us. The component of us, the ego part, says, I created myself. Where did that come from? So it comes along Kabbalah and says, don't worry, you can blame God for it. Let's blame God for it. Why? Very simple. How did God come about? From himself. Who created us? God. So we have a part of God within us.
Yes.
Which part? The part that says, I created myself.
Oy.
Is it true or not true? So we have someone to blame.
Say that again, Rabbi.
Okay. The ego says I created myself.
Right.
So you say to the ego, what do you mean? So, and the answer is very simple, according to Kabbalah. Who created you? God. So, we basically, what's it called? We mimic, we follow, right?
Shadow.
What's the title?
Shadow.
We shadow, we mimic, right? We emulate, right? We're followers, we have mentors, right? So we look at God, and you think, oh my gosh, who created God? No, he came from himself. So we follow the song, we follow the script. We also came from ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have someone to blame it on.
The good we created, the bad that we don't like, let God.
It's just the opposite.
Okay, now, the fact is, did we really come from ourselves? No. But we sometimes believe that, and we sometimes not only believe it, we actually act that way.
Right.
But if you're able to see, if you had the proper glasses, could you see that you came from God? Sure. Now, right now, unfortunately, God is concealed, and the ego is revealed. But when the Messiah comes, what's going to happen? The light will go on, and you're going to see clearly where you came from. So you won't be able to say that anymore. Now, but because we are in the image of God, we have that power that God has, which we can say we created ourselves. Mm-hmm. In other words, the Rebbe uses a term, and he says, the Kabbalistic concept, there's the Kabbalistic concept that no'utz tchilosan b'soifan. Meaning it says like this. When you have in mind, let's say you're sitting down and you're saying, oh, I have a dream, I want to build a house. And I say, what is that? And in your mind, you have the whole house, what it's going to look like. How many bedrooms, design, everything. What do you have right now? Nothing. You have a thought. Nothing. But then you have to get an architect, you have to get an engineer, you got to get a builder, you got to get permits, you got to get the funding together, you got to get the material together, and it could take many, possibly years till you design and you build your beautiful house. What are you going to have at the end when you finally build it? You're going to have the house that was originally in your brain. You're going to have the house that was originally in your brain. So the end product is actually the first idea that you had. But it takes a whole process till you get there. In other words, this materialistic world, the ego that we have, that's the end. That's the last thing God created. Look in the creation, when God created the world in 6 days, on the seventh day He created man. 6th day He created man. Shabbos is the day of rest, 7th day. So, but we are the last thing God actively created. Shabbos was God rested, even though Shabbos is on a certain level a type of a creation, different type of creation. But this world, this ego that God created, that we exist, guess what? That's the last thing God created. And the goal is that this last thing God created, that comes from God, that thinks at times that we're its own independent existence, the goal is that in that ego, what should shine? That there's a God in the world. We should accept the fact that God created the world. And that's an accomplishment. And as we went from the infinite God to creating something so materialistic, so independent, but ultimately the goal is that this independent existence should say what? I come from God. Now that's an accomplishment. And it's a lifelong challenge and a lifelong journey. Now, so in other words like this. This infinite God, where is God expressed? In the higher worlds? No. Because in the higher worlds, they recognize there's a God in the world. The ray of light is there. You realize there's a God in the world. But this component of God, the most powerful part of God, that God comes from Himself, that's only where? In this materialistic world. Think about it. All the world, Atzilut, Bri, Yetzira, Asiya, is God revealed on some level? Yes, Atzilus in the greatest way, Bria less, Yetzira less, but there's still a revelation of God. It still comes from the light of God. So in the words of Kabbalah, if God is infinite, and then God concealed Himself, contracted Himself, So in any of the worlds, Atzilot, Bri, Yetzira, Asiya, is that really an upgrade for God or a downgrade? It's downgrading, constantly downgrading it.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a downgrade. What was the point? But in this world, after the lights are all off, all the lights are off, Olam Hasiya, this physical world, all the lights are off, and there's an ego that exists. Guess what that is? That's what God wanted, to create almost something like himself, the Metzius Matzmusai. But if he's able to bring in and recognize and bring in that infinite light into this physical world, that's an accomplishment. But now the question is a simple question. What are we saying? Whoa, we just said everything from the infinite essence of God down to this materialistic world is all a downgrade for God? I mean, isn't this world called, what do we call this world? Down here, right? What do we call the world up there? Higher.
Up.
Right? Higher and higher. So if it's higher, we're saying that's the opposite. We're saying, what are we saying? We're saying, no, that's the downgrade for God. Why is it called higher if it's really lower? So again, as I mentioned before, the Alter Rebbe is going to bring in a teaching from every one of the Chabad rabbis. So we did the first Chabad Rebbe, which is the Alter Rebbe, and now the Rebbe is going to bring in the teaching from the Mitzvah Rebbe. And the Rebbe is going to explain as follows. There's a concept like this. The higher something is, when it falls much lower. In Hebrew, Kol ha'gavoya gavoya b'yoser, yored lamata lamata b'yoser. In other words, think about it. Think about if you have a building, 100 stories, 100-story building, and the building collapses. What is going to fall much further away from the building? The first floor or the 100th floor?
100th.
The 100th floor. The first floor is going to stay on the spot where it is. It never collapses. It's right there. The second floor will be a couple of feet away. Third floor, it's easier to put it back together. It's very close to its source. But the 100th floor, the penthouse, right? The most expensive floor in the building. Where is it? Miles away. Maybe it's even gone. Maybe even gone. Right? Think about it. You have a 100-story building. You blow into it. The higher floors are possibly gone. Now, what is that concept in Kabbalah? It's called Kol HaGavoya Gavoya B'Yoser. Whatever's higher, when it falls much lower. Which meaning to say is that the infinite part of God, where is that felt? Lower, 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 lower. So in other words, and he gives three parables. The Mitzvah Rebbe gives three parables in a very, very deep, long Chassidic discourse. And there he brings it here. And he explains like this. He gives three parables. Three mishalim. Because when you want to explain something deep, you need a parable. First parable, he says, is as follows. Take, for example, let's say we're sitting in this room. And let's say 1,000 feet from here, we want to see what's doing there. Now somebody in this room has this like real expensive LED super light that can go 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet. Now, the reality is it's expensive LED light. First one out there, it goes 1,000 feet and it's like very, very powerful. So he plugs it in right here, puts it on, and sure enough, wow, it's amazing. It goes out 1,000 feet. I'm using an example. You can use any amount of feet you want. But at the end, when it reaches 1,000 feet, is it as strong as right here in this room? No, it goes down much lower. Now, what happens if somebody is standing right there in 1,000 feet from here, and he has a flashlight? And his flashlight is strong. It's not stronger than your light. This light puts out, let's say, for example, I don't know, 1,000 BTUs of light, and I don't know if I'm using the right term, 1,000 powers of energy, and the other one can put out 100. But candle powers. Now your 1,000, by the time it gets to that area, it's maybe 10 left. 10, the power of 10. He's standing there with a light of 100. What's stronger? The light of 100 or light of 1,000? 1,000 is much stronger. But in 1,000 feet from here, if you're standing there right there with a flashlight that has 100, right there on that spot, what's stronger? The 100's stronger. But on the other hand, what would you rather have? The 100 or the 1,000? The guy with the 1,000. This is valuable stuff. There was an auction, people bid it out. I got the most powerful light. So even though in 1,000 feet from me it only gives me 10, but guess what? That's okay. I got the 1,000. He has 100. So what? He's standing there. He has 100. He walks away. He almost has nothing. So in other words, the Mitzvah Rebbe uses this analogy to show you that something which is higher, when it's much further, it's much less. But on the other hand, it's coming from much more powerful source. That's one analogy he gives. Second analogy, he says,
What's a more powerful source?
The 1,000. The infinite is much more powerful.
So you're going from the gross to the subtle to the very subtle. Is that what you're saying?
No, what we're saying is that if you have the best light out there of 1,000,
the gross is the 1,000.
Right.
The very subtle is the 10.
In 1,000 feet from here. But guess what? I can always move my light over if I had to. You see what I mean? I have the 1,000. So if I had to, I can move it over. I'm dealing with a much more powerful light.
So you're grosser.
Yes, absolutely. So,
but yet, the very subtle.
It's a weaker light. On the spot, it's maybe better. But who wants on the spot? I want to have delta anytime I want. I put out 1,000 powers of light.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you can argue it. It's only a mashal, a parable, to bring out that when you have something so great, when it goes down, it's less. So therefore, the analogy he's trying to bring out, if you want, we can explain now, I was going to do it after all three, that even though the higher worlds might be higher than this world, but the fact is, the power that we're getting in this world is coming from the essence of God. See, that's the point of the analogy, to show you, even though, yes, the higher worlds are higher. It's like someone standing with 100 watt light, lumens light flashlight. But we have, guess what? We're coming from the source. I want to have the source. I want my connection to God, to the infinite part of God. That's one mashal. I'll give you a second mashal. I'll give you three parables he gives. The second parable the Mitzvah Rebbe gives is as follows. Let's say, for example, you have this huge 100-gallon tank of water. 100-gallon tank of water. And it's overflowing, and it spills over. 3 gallons spill out. How much do you have spilling out around the tank? 3 gallons. A lot of water. What happens if somebody has 1 cup of water, 8-ounce cup of water, and he can sit there and drink it nicely, sip his tea? It's nice, right? What would you rather have? 100 gallons and it spills out a couple of gallons? What big deal? Is a couple of gallons spill out? Or do you have the 1 cup? Huh?
100 gallons.
You want the 100 gallons, the 1 cup, you sip it, you're done. So even though you have a couple of gallons in the water, but guess what? I have the source is right there. Again, he wants to bring out, you really always want to have the thing that in the source is much greater. He said another example. In that, he gives us another similar example. Still in the second example, if you have, let's say, a wise person. Take someone, for example, that studies Mishnah, Talmud, the prophets, the writings, Kabbalah, mysticism, right? And he's like 24/7, he's in-depth study. And then you sit down and chit-chat with him. Do you think his chit-chat is going to be just cheap chit-chat? Because even his chit-chat is coming from a place of depth. Even his jokes are meaningful jokes and deep jokes. Versus someone who just never studied or anything and has chit-chat, it's empty. There's no basis for it. The point, again, from the analogy is that when your source is solid and strong, the leftovers are very powerful. Mm-hmm. The third analogy he gives, and then we'll explain it. The third analogy that Mitzvah Rebbe gives is that, take, for example, husband and wife get married, and they want a child. 2 deep intellects, right, have degrees, and they sit and they talk from today to tomorrow about all these intellectual things about having children and all these philosophies about kids. And guess what? They're never intimate. And will they ever have a child? Mm-mm. Not happening. It's not happening. On the other hand, when there's physical intimacy and there's a union, guess what? You can have a child. So in other words, what's greater? Intellect or a physical union?
Yeah.
Huh?
Intellect's never greater.
what is, it depends how you look at it, right? But on a certain level, intellect is higher than that's the physical union. But on the other hand, even though it's higher in some regard, if you want to have a child, you need the physical union. In other words, what do you see from all these three analogies? The common denominator, that the greatest power gets diluted to something so simple, but in the simplicity, you're always connected to its source. Because even the physical union, it's connected back to its original source. Okay, so in other words, like this. What are the higher worlds? The higher worlds, the world of Atzilut, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. But ultimately, where is it all at? Where's the connection to the deepest part, specifically in this physical world? Now, take for example this physical world. What's considered the physical world? Literally the physical world, the coarse world. So the Rebbe explains the same thing also when it comes to doing a mitzvah. A mitzvah has to be done not meditation, not passion, which you need that too. But the main result of a mitzvah is the physical activity. When you do the physical mitzvah, that's where it's at. Why? Just like the earth is the physical, the same thing also, the mitzvah has to be something very physical.
So an intention doesn't do it?
What?
The intention is only...
Yes, exactly.
Intention
Right.
means nothing.
Exactly. No, it means nothing. In terms of the connection with it doesn't mean nothing. It has a place. There's a place. But to connect to the infinite, the essence of the infinite, specifically to the mitzvah.
It means nothing if I'm hungry and you had the intent to feed me and you didn't. I'm starving.
But if I have a rock in my hand, I think I'm going to throw it at you, but don't.
No.
Okay, so actually, good question. We're going to discuss. That's what he discusses now in the next chapter. This is a long discourse, but this is there's a lot of components, moving components. Okay, so to discuss what you're bringing up, as follows. So the Rebbe explains. Here we see now the difference between a keresh, a beam, and a mitzvah. What does that mean like this? We know the Crushin were beams. Now the beams had a certain measurement, right? They were 10 amot in length. What is 10 amot in length? So we know 10 amot resembles the sfirot, the 3 intellectual and the 7 emotional. So the Rebbe says, look at the Crushin. 10 amos length spiritually, it's the intellect, the emotions. But guess what? The intellect, the emotions, that's great, and you need that. We're a koyim shleim, we need that. But what does a keresh do? It just connects the top to the bottom. It sits in the floor and it holds the ceiling. So when you study and when you meditate and you're passionately excited about God and you love God and everything, that's wonderful. You're going to connect to God. But if you want to draw down the infinite God into this world, that's where you need a mitzvah. A keresh, an emotion, an intellect is not going to do the job. If you want to draw down godliness in this world, you have to be willing to do a physical mitzvah. And the previous Rebbe actually explains, he brings the previous Rebbe many times, but the previous Rebbe explains that that's why there's 2 types of mitzvot. There are physical mitzvot. Eating kosher is a physical mitzvah, right? They're putting on tefillin, lighting the Shabbos candles, physical mitzvot. But then there's many, many mitzvot which are spiritual. For example, loving God, being in awe of God, having kavanah. I mean, there's many mitzvot which are spiritual. Believing in God, having trust in God. So the previous Rebbe says, because what's the key we're learning in this discourse? The key is to do the physical mitzvah. The key is to do the physical mitzvah. Therefore, even when you're doing the spiritual mitzvot, loving God, being in awe of God, what should you do? Make sure that the love is not just a feeling. Make sure that you actually feel the love. The love is permeating every part of your being. You're like, when you're in love, your body's shaking. or you're in awe, you're like in trepidation, or you have trust in God. It's like every part of your body is it. Because when you do that, then you're not only doing the mitzvah on a spiritual level, which would be like Crushin, you're connected to God. But when you're actually drawing down light, you want to make sure that the mitzvot, which are emotional and more spiritual, that you feel it in a very physical, tangible way. This way, you'll be able to draw down godly energy in this world. Okay. Now, so the Rebbe continues on to explain. In the Mishkan, there were Crushin, right? There were the beams. Now, why were there beams? So he explains that the beams were to create a connection to God, to eradicate the other three letters of a kesher, a keresh, which is sheker, falsehood. And he brings down, the Rebbe brings down from the verse in the in Psalms. It says like this: Gar chayes kana, which refers to like this. We know the kuf is like a hay, but the left leg is long. What is the idea? The left leg is long. That is the idea of all the male klipot. All the male klipot is in the left leg, which is long, which means to say is you have a passion and an excitement about things which are not necessarily godly. And then you have the chayas kana, which is the female klipot. The female klipot is when you feel like you're like a doormat. When you feel like you're a doormat, not good. And unfortunately, we know the klipot, the goal is either to get you to be excited about things which are counter to godliness, or to get you to feel like a loser, a doormat. And then it can get you. Mm-hmm. So Kabbalah says our job is to get rid of those negative feelings, whether the male or the female one. And what happens when you cut off the kuf, you know what happens when you cut off the kuf? You cut off the leg of the kuf, you end up with a hay. Mm-hmm. Now a hay is holiness. Why? Because a hay, what's a hay? Comes from the word of hine. Hine means here. What does here mean? Revealed. Because klipot always want you to hide. In Kedusha, it's all about being revealed. Because when you reveal everything, what do you see? What happens when you reveal everything? You see everything is from God. And matter of fact, what does it say when Mashiach is going to come? On that day when Mashiach is going to come, they're going to say, Hine, behold, Elokeinu said, this is our God, which means we're going to reveal godliness in everything in the world. Now, so how do we go ahead and reveal godliness? So here the Rebbe explains there's two types of avoda, two types of work. One is called iskafia, when you resist, but more importantly, when a person practices something which is called ishapcha. Ishapcha means when you unfortunately want to do something bad, whether intellectually, verbally, physically, instead of doing something negative and bad, on the contrary, you do something positive. By doing something positive in a physical way, you actually transform the world in a positive way, and you cause the infinite light of God, the level of God, which we call Ani Hashem Lo Shani, see that God has not changed, because we know the infinite God has always been around, is around, will always be around. And every time we practice Ishapcha, we actually cause that to come down to this world. Now, so again, you saw before the Rebbe brought down from the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe. Now he's going to bring down from the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Tzemach Tzedek explains a verse of Isaiah, in the prophet Isaiah, that says like this: Haboyim Yashreish Yaakov Yatzitz Uperach Yisrael, which basically he compares mitzvot to planting. In other words, like this. In order for, let's say you want to plant a fruit, a vegetable, whatever you want to plant. Where do you have to plant it? In the ground. So in other words, in order to plant anything and for it to grow, you need it to be in the ground. So the same thing also, in order to plant and produce anything, to do mitzvot, you have to do it in the ground. What does that mean? Very, very simple. He says like this. There's a concept in Kabbalah, it says that God is our spiritual king. Now we know, Ein Melech B'lo Yam. For example, could you be a king in a country and not have one person that lives there? By definition, you can't be a king. A king, by definition, is over a nation. Now, a nation that's 100% robots. Let's say you have a nation with 1 million people and they're all robots. Are you a king? No. A real king is over a nation that are independent, have a mind of their own, and really a mind of their own, like the ego, right? Ego. And the ego decides and realizes, oh my gosh, God created me, God maintains me, and I want to serve Him. That's when you become a real king. So, in other words, the Tzemach Tzedek says if you want to create a real mitzvah, it has to be specifically a person in this world, a person that's independent, a person with a real ego, and when you do the mitzvah of Hashem, that's when you can plant and you can grow tremendous, beautiful things in this world, and obviously the ultimate revelation that God will be revealed when Mashiach comes. Now, that is what from the Tzemach Tzedek. Here the Rebbe goes in, he brings from the Rebbe Marash, holding by the next Rebbe Marash, Rebbe, and he brings a quote from a verse in Jeremiah. And in Jeremiah it says like this: Avas oilam ahavticha, I love you, a love of oilam, which we'll translate what that means in a second, and therefore I'm drawn to you with kindness. Now, so generally speaking, we know there's different levels of love of God. There's different levels. There's a level of love of God which is a low level of God from the world. You look around the world, you see God created the world, you love God. Then there's a level of love which is called Avarabba. Tremendous, much greater level of love. Here the Rebbe Marash translates Avas Olam, not the low level of God that comes from the world, but it's actually a level, an Ava Nitzchis, an everlasting love, which is much greater than even the level of Avarabba. What does that mean? And the Rebbe explains like this. There's two ways someone can come to love God. One way is you meditate on the physical world that God created, the finite world that God created, and you end up loving God. What kind of love is that? That's going to be a low level of love. Why? Because what's the love based on? Physical things, materialistic things, finite things. So the love is not going to be so great. On the other hand, when the love for God is based on infinite part of God, then what kind of love do you have for God? An infinite type of love for God. So he brings down, he says like this: there's something which is called a level of love, 3 years, 10 years, 100 years. But this is much higher than all of them. What's 3 years? So he explains like this. We know there's 4 worlds, but in this case there's 3 worlds, one category, one in a whole different category. The 3 worlds in one category is called the world of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, which compared to Atzilus, it's two different leagues. Atzilus comes from close to God. Bria, Yetzira, Asiya is more finite worlds compared to Asiya. In Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, there's also 3 components in every one of these worlds called Olam, the world, the physical world that we're living in, Shana, time, which is limiting, and Nefesh, our physical body. So in every one of these worlds there's physical limited things, world, space, and time. That's one level of love. Then he says there's a level of 10 years, which refers to the 10 sfirot in the world of Atzilut. So that's the 10 years. And then there's something which is called 100 years, which is Keser, which is above Atzilut, because every 10 sfirot, every one of the spheres are combined with the other 10, you create 10. So he says all those, even though as great as it is, you're talking Bri, Yetzirah, Asiya, you're talking about Atzilut, you're talking about the sfirot, you're talking about the world of Keser, those are all connected to the world. However, this Avas Olam is we're thinking about not just the way God's connected to the world, the way God is way beyond any connection to the world, the way the infinite part of God. And when a person does that, our job is to draw down, not from Bri, Yetzirah, Asiya, or Atzilut. Our job is to draw down from the most highest and greatest places. In other words, to draw down from the idea, the Kabbalistic idea, which says, Ani Hashem lo shenisi, that I am God, that has not changed, which means that God is in all levels the same. When a person has that level of love for God, you're able to draw down from the highest levels. Now, so we have so far the Alter Rebbe, the Mitzvah Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, we just did the Rebbe Marash. Now the Rebbe is going to bring in the Rebbe Rashab, we call him the Shmasei Edom, And the Rebbe says like this, simple question. What did we just say? That there's a component of God, Ani Hashem, Lo Shenisi. God has not changed. What does it mean God hasn't changed? God, the infinite God, made a tzimtzum, contraction, atzilut, bri, etc., and He created this world. So one component we say that God never changed. So the Rebbe Rashab asked, He never changed. He was infinite. He created atzilut, bri, He created this physical world, the physical world. He didn't change from anything. How did He not change? So the Rebbe Rashab explains as follows: that the light of God, the light of God never changed. So how is there all these concealments? So the Rebbe Rashab explains that the concealment is not from the light. The light hasn't changed. What the concealment is from, the name God has many names. The concealment is from the Shem Elokim, the finite name of God. Now, God, Yud Kei Vav Kei is the infinite part of God. Elokim is the finite part of God. The Yud Kei Vav Kei never changed. That infinite light is always here. Elokim is what creates the concealment, right? The blockages, etc. Now, and this is a very important concept. Elokim is part of God or not? Sure, it's part of God. So there's a rule in Kabbalah. It says an etzem cannot block an etzem. You cannot block yourself. You can block somebody else, right? Let's say I'm standing here, and you don't want someone to see me. So you stand in front of me. Could the person see me? No. Now, but let's say, now you guys might think it's going to sound a little neurotic, but let's say I want to block myself from myself.
Yeah.
I want to block. It's almost neurotic. How can you block yourself from yourself? You are you. It's an impossibility. Yeah. So you cannot block yourself from yourself. So therefore, the infinite part of God was before God created the world, after, etc. What created the concealment? Shem Elokim. But Shem Elokim is not an external blockage. It's God Himself creating the blockage. So could you block yourself from yourself? So since you can't block yourself from yourself, therefore did God change? So on one hand, it's the same God. The infinite, it's all the same God. On the other hand, there's concealment that creates different levels. But who's creating the concealment? God Himself. So you can't block yourself from yourself. So therefore, did God change? No. And is it hard to comprehend how come God didn't change? Because it's not someone blocked Him. He blocked Himself, and you can't block yourself from yourself, and it's only the external part of God that blocked Himself. I mean, obviously, we could talk about this for hours. I'm giving you a Chassidic discourse in an hour and a half, which could take maybe 20 years to study.
Yeah,
So can we start our own Chabads now?
We can start our own Chabad. You got it? Okay, 1 second. What? Okay.
We open a lot of doors there, Rabbi.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And I'll give you an example. And it's a very, very powerful example. So just to create a little more concreteness. The Rebbe gives this example. Take, for example, the sun. The sun. We'll call it, in Kabbalah, the words of Kabbalah is called the Ma'or. The Ma'or means the source of the light. The sun, the source of the light. Now, the source of the light is the source for the light. Now, from the source of the light comes out light. And the light is in this world. Because of the light we could see, or at times we can't see, depending if the light is on or off. Now, the light that we're using to see in this world, is that light disconnected from its source? No. It's not disconnected. Now that light sometimes shines more, sometimes shines less. Now, the light that we have in this world, it's hundreds of miles away from its source. In its source, does it exist or it doesn't exist? Really? We'll take you a plane up to the light, to the sun. Show me the light that's in this world. I'm not disagreeing with you. So it exists, but it's totally nullified.
It's like, let's find the blue sky.
Exactly. So it exists, but it's totally nullified. So in other words, like this, God always exists. Even when God comes down this world, it exists, but it's always connected to its source. So it never really changed. It's nullified to its source. Okay. Obviously, just to make it clear, I'm giving you Chassidic discourse. Again, we can spend days, weeks, months studying. I'm giving you a general overview, but we covered every part of the discourse. But now, we're going to go into the end of the discourse, which is a beautiful, beautiful meditation. And I think if you really take this meditation seriously and sincerely, you'll walk out with hopefully a transformation. Okay. So we're going to focus now, and we're going to meditate on this deep concept we studied here, and that is as follows. What are we saying? And this is a very important concept. The infinite God has not changed. Has not changed. Not changed. There was contractions. And again, we discussed it was from Shem Elokim, without getting into details. There's contractions, concealments. He created the world of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, right? Down to this world. He created an egotistical human being, many, right? But guess what? God hasn't changed. God has not changed. Now that's powerful. Who over here, after a hard day of work, is not exhausted? I mean, come on. Right? Fine, worked 3 days straight. I mean, at some point we get exhausted. And what does that mean? We had energy, now we have less energy. We change. I don't mean but there is some kind of change. Here we're saying there's no change in God. There's no change in God. So is that powerful or what? That's powerful. Mm-hmm. So the Rebbe says, when you meditate on this idea that God has not changed, and he did a lot, more than you probably do in a whole lifetime. He has not changed. Wouldn't you want to and have a tremendous yearning that all our power and all our wills should be godly?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You got it, right?
Exactly.
If God is so powerful, wouldn't you want that all your powers, our powers, and all our will should be godly? Absolutely. You'd want that. Right? Now, that's one meditation. Again, meditating on the fact that this infinite God created everything and nothing. Whew. It's hard for us to comprehend it, because it's not something we're used to. But God is like that, and we can meditate it, we can think about that, we can meditate on it. So wouldn't we want to say, oh my gosh, you know what, I want that. Don't we want better things in life? More things in life? A better life, a greater life? So why go for the simple, cheap stuff? Let's go for the real deal. Why shouldn't each and every one of us want that our powers should be powers, infinite powers, that we never get tired? We can study, we can pray, we can do mitzvot, we can, whatever we have to, whatever we want to do. Everything should be godly. Okay, that's one meditation. Next meditation. When you meditate in the fact that God hasn't changed, and that every single thing that exists is from God. I mean, what in this world is not God? Name me something, and I'll show you God in it. Or not to show you, you can see God in it yourself. Mm-hmm. So therefore, everything in this world is God. Now, some things, unfortunately, fortunately we see that's God, and some things we don't see. We see a table, but really it's God. Now, we live in this world, and we receive different things from this world. Whether it's food, housing, money, whatever it is, we receive things from God. Now, we receive things from different places. But wouldn't the meditation would be, since God is so infinite and God is amazing, and really everything is God, so the meditation is, let's get everything from God. Everything I want and need, probably more need than want, but everything I need, and let's even say some of my wants, it's okay to have some wants, right? My needs and wants, I should get directly from God. Not from anything that's not. Now, the fact is everybody in this world God? Yes. So technically you're getting it from God. But what we mean to say is we get it from someone that behaves like God. So for example, if somebody is humble, you work for a humble person, or your parents are humble, your friends are humble. Do you feel like you're getting it from a human being that's egotistical, that's trying to control you, manipulate you? No. But you want to get everything from God. So the meditation is, I should want to get everything from God. Now wouldn't that be nice that everything you got was from God? Think about if that was the reality. How much love would you have in your life?
But it is a reality.
It is a reality.
Yes.
1 second. How much love would you have in your life? It would be 24/7, just full of
Yes.
love.
Always.
So anything you need, you wouldn't have to deal with any obnoxious customer service. Because everything you'd be getting straight from God, right?
You would see it with love.
Exactly. So in other words like this. 2 meditations. Comes along the Rebbe, and he says something so powerful, so beautiful, and so honest. And he says like this. The first meditation is, God hasn't changed. What do I want? I want that all my powers should be all godly. So the Rebbe says, guess what? That's something every one of us can have in this world. We could work, not easy sometimes, work hard, and with tremendous effort, and the Rebbe quotes 2 words, I'm going to say it in Hebrew from the Zohar, and he says like this, very important 2 words. This is one of the 2 Kabbalistic words that will help you in your life, 2 Kabbalistic words, Migoi Aksa, which means from within the challenge. From within the challenge, you can achieve tremendous things. So in other words, when a person goes through a challenge, I'm giving up, it's terrible. No. That's where it's at. From within the challenge that you're having right now, that's where you can have all your powers from God, and you can have a relationship with God. Now sometimes you have to do Mesiras Nefesh. You have to be willing to sacrifice what you want, but for what God wants. By doing what? Everything should be exclusive for Hashem, and all your passions and your desires are not for Hashem. That's the whole idea of Kabbanot. What's the idea of sacrifices? The spiritual idea of sacrifice in the temple is that all my personal, egotistical desires, put it on the altar, burn it out. All the passions of my personal passions, physical passions, burn it out on the altar. Anything that's not for God, burn it on the altar. So the Rebbe says that this dream and this meditation and request that we have, that all our power should come from God and all our will should be from God, we can have that. And again, not easy at times. But if we're willing to persevere, or as he quotes in his own Migoi Akta, from within that challenge, from within the struggle, you can make sure that everything you got is from God. Even going into a struggle, God, I need your help. God will give you the help to go through it.
Even within a struggle.
Even within the struggle. And matter of fact, something specifically in the struggle, God give you the strength. So we could have and achieve that everything we need, all our powers, and all our will should be godly. And whatever is not godly, and whatever is not coming from our godly side, but it's coming from our egotistical side, we can throw it on the altar. We can accomplish it, 100%. By what? By meditating, again, remember, by meditating on the fact that God's infinite, God has never changed. I want to have powers like God. Hello, God created me. I am part of God. So I want to use which powers? My godly powers. I want to use my godly powers. Guess what? You can do it. You could use your godly powers for God. And you can only use godly powers. And all the egotistical powers you can throw on the altar. However, the Rebbe says, the second meditation, that you want to receive everything directly from where God is revealed, the Rebbe says, guess what? That didn't happen yet. Why? Because we're living in a physical world. And bechitzonius, not in reality, bechitzonius, in an external level, the ego still exists. And therefore, unfortunately, we still have to, again, from within, the first meditation, that's from within, that you have the power. But when you're dealing with from without, other people, other things, other places, the world has not been transformed yet. When will the world be transformed? The Messiah comes. When the Messiah comes, the world will be transformed, and then you'll be able to receive everything from a revealed God. Today we receive it from a concealed God, because God's concealed. When Mashiach comes, we'll be able to get there. But fine, it's okay to meditate on it, and maybe you can have, by meditating, you can have a little more percentages of it. And on the contrary, by doing mitzvot in this world, we can make the world more refined and more better. Okay, so that is a very, very powerful meditation, and I would recommend that you do it every single day, or as often as you can, to meditate on the fact that God is so great, and we want to have our part of God that was within us should be our true powers. We should only do what God wants. And this way, we'll have godly powers, and we'll be able to be busy doing mitzvot. Just I'll take a question in 1 second. So just to wrap up, the last chapter, Rabbi finishes off, and he makes a summation of the Chassidic Discourse, and he says like this, that this is what it means, what King Solomon said, Basi Legani, we start off the Discourse, Achoisi Kala, that the main Shechina, the infinite power of God was down here in this world, and our job is to make what? This physical world a place for God. By doing what? By doing what again? Any time we, in this world, do a physical mitzvah, that means us, we physical human beings, do a physical mitzvah, whether it's a physical mitzvah or we take a spiritual mitzvah and we make it physical to us, we actually feel it, we are drawing down, not revelations. We're drawing down the essence of God into this physical world. And by doing that, we are making the Ikar Shechina, the infinite part of God, felt in a real tangible way in this world, which right now, we might not necessarily see it completely, but God willing, when Mashiach comes, we will see this world, that the world will be totally 100% godly, in a real godly way, and then we'll be able to have the second meditation, that we will be able to receive everything from a revealed God in this world. So until the Mashiach comes, obviously we don't have that yet, but our job in this world is to refine the world, to refine ourselves, but ultimately to refine the world, that when Mashiach comes, we'll be living in a world where God will be totally revealed in a great way. And I think that this discourse is, if you think about it, it's really, really transforming, and it allows you to appreciate the power of mitzvot. We do mitzvot every single day, every single week, every month, different mitzvot, but we don't realize how powerful it is. Literally, when you do a physical mitzvah, you're taking this physical world and you're bringing down and you're revealing in a real way the infinite part of God. I mean, think about the power that we have. But that's on one level. Number two is, not only are we bringing down the infinite part of God, we also have the power that we can become more godly people, live more of a godly life, and you're living a whole different reality. Because you're living with godly powers. Just like God has these powers, we can have that too. We're part of God. And we're also preparing the world for when Mashiach comes, that the world itself will be ready, because the world will be refined, and then literally be able to see in a real way godliness in everything. The truth is, it's here already now. We just don't see it. But our job is to keep on making the world ready, and the more mitzvahs we can do, the greater we're going to have a greater life now, greater powers, and more importantly, we'll make the world ready for when Mashiach comes.